What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. My name's Pat Moriarty, and today we're going to talk about what makes a good surf trip. So, planning a surf trip, how do you do it? What are the things to think about? We'll get into it. But before we get into it, I want to show you guys this image from my YouTube studio. As you can see, only 5.4% of you guys are subscribed that watch the show regularly. So, if you're someone who's returning and you view my content a lot, please hit that subscribe button. It costs you nothing and it helps me out a lot. And if you do that, then I'll promise to create even better videos. And let's get into it. Welcome to Pat Moriarty Surf. I'm no professional surfer, just a dude who loves the sport. In this channel, I'll provide you with educational, entertaining, and relatable surf content. Subscribe to support the dream. Okay, today we're going to be discussing the 5 things that make a good surf trip. So coming into number 5, the surf crew or solo warrior. So I started my travels as a solo surfer. Where I grew up in the community I was in, no one really surfed. Grew up about an hour away from the nearest beach, and I grew up in more of a suburban setting where not a lot of people surfed. So I had really no choice when I embarked on my surf journey to go with a friend or not. So I was doing it all solo. So something to take away here is that if you want to get into surfing, nobody's going to do it for you. So I'd say this is your sign to hit the road by yourself and go on that adventure, that surf adventure that'll pay off for sure. And as I started surfing, I will say that you start to accumulate more time in the water and see the same faces. You meet friends pretty quickly. For example, I met a group of 2 brothers in the Philippines and then also ran into them in my time in West Australia. You can see the image of me hanging out with one of them here. So as you carry on to your surf journey, you're able to see the same faces, meet the same crew, and as well as you improve your surf ability, it becomes easier and easier to have confidence and meet people, things like that. So one thing to keep in mind is that if you are traveling with a friend, it's definitely easier and cheaper. So last year I was traveling in Indo, me and my friend Rose, and we traveled together and were able to split the cost of everything. We trekked from Java to Sumatra, scored some really fun waves. And for a full month in Sumatra, we each had total expenses of $400 each. Crazy how cheap things can get when A, you're in a place like Indonesia, a lot of these surf destinations, and B, when you're splitting everything, so you're splitting the travel, you're splitting the accommodation, and things like this. So takeaway here is if you can find a group to book that surf trip with, definitely do it. If not, become a solo warrior and you'll thank yourself later on. Now, number 4, wave consistency. Is it a fickle location? There is nothing more frustrating than seeing perfect waves on YouTube or Instagram at your desired surf spot, and in your mind, you think that's what you're going to get when you show up. It's like that all the time, when in reality, it's only like that 4 to 5 days a year. I had this experience when I went to Cloud9 in the Philippines. You see those videos of Cloud9 just going off, and I was super excited for this, but when I arrived there, I got 2-foot slop for weeks, and it was onshore winds and really never working all that well. This trip was rough for me for a variety of reasons. So 1, the waves were blown out, and then 2, I also got a bacteria infection from a cut I had on my foot that I didn't properly take care of, and that had me out for about 2 weeks. So the reality of this is we cannot control the ocean, but we can play the probability game. So research places where there's consistent swell with offshore winds, and those are the 2 best things to look for. Offshore winds, consistent swell. So if you're on the Western Hemisphere, I would say a place like Nicaragua, the Popoya region, they benefit from the lake effect. And so there's a lake in the middle of the country, and essentially winds blow offshore for about 300 days out of the year. Next, Indonesia is always a good place to go. I've been to Indonesia now 3 times, and I've never got skunked. You can get good swell, good waves here nearly all year round. So that's what I would recommend. Now, consideration number 3, localism, and will the waves suit your level? Now, let's talk about localism. So here's the deal. I've traveled to surf destinations all over the world, and it's true that some spots have more strict localism than other spots. However, the problems really only occur when you're surfing a wave in which your skill level doesn't match and you're getting in people's way and making it more dangerous for everyone involved. In this respect, localism is actually a positive thing as it keeps the lineup safe for everyone, and essentially you're scaring off the incompetent surfers to go surf at other breaks. As I've improved my surf ability, any sort of confrontation with locals or other surfers in general has dramatically decreased. And I think this is just human nature. The reality is we tend to pick on or bully people who are less competent than we are in whatever domain. And so if you are a surfer at the bottom of the totem pole, that's all right, you won't be there for long. But I would recommend surfing different waves that are more compatible to a lower skill level. So your first few days, if you're an intermediate surfer, I would recommend going to the beginner spots, getting comfortable in the water, and then if you want to push yourself, then head to those more advanced waves, and you'll be able to sort of ease into it that way. Number 2, cost/travel. How long will it take to get there? How expensive is it? Some surf destinations can be an absolute nightmare to get to. On this trip to Indonesia, I spent 24 hours in a plane just to get to Bali. I then hung out in Bali for a little bit and then took a 1-hour flight from Bali to Bima, and then from Bima drove 3 hours to where I am now. This has a double-edged sword because the places that are harder to get to, more travel, are often less crowded and cheaper. Where I'm at now, Lakey Peak, even in the shoulder season, does have a fair amount of crowds. Keep in mind, any place that you hear about nowadays on social media or YouTube will have other surfers there by definition. However, if it's pumping, more than enough waves to go around. Additionally, when we consider costs, you want to look at how much the travel is as a percentage of the total trip. So when coming to Indo, for me, living in New Jersey, which is about as far away from Indo as you can get, it costs between $600 and $800 to get here. My flight to get here was, $700. And so you want to look at that in relation to how long your trip is. Because once you're here, it only costs around $800 to $1,000 per month of living here. So what you really want to try to do is extend that trip for as long as you possibly can so that the travel costs are a smaller percentage of the total trip. Essentially what you do when you elongate the length of a trip is you make the variable cost of each day cheaper and cheaper. So by example, if you go on a 2-week trip to Indo, then essentially 50% of your costs will be travel. And then actually more than that, like 75% of your total cost will be the travel to get there. But if you go for say 3 months, I think I'll be here this time for about 6 months, then the percent that the travel is only like 10-20%, and the rest you're spending on the actual experience, which is what you want. Number 1 thing to be in mind when booking a surf trip is to be in surf shape. You don't want to burn out on day 3 of your surf trip. So it's a story as old as time itself. You get the time off from work, you pay for the surf trip, and once you arrive, you're reminded that the ocean doesn't care about any of that. If only you had prepared more in the months leading up to your trip, you would be in surf shape and be able to handle the waves much better. Here's the deal. The way you get into surf shape is to surf, and the reality is we can't surf all the time. If you train on land, you can prepare your mind and body for the water. I have a background in strength training and have prepared the ideal workout programming for surfers. You can find it in the PDF in the link in the description below. Right now we're doing a 50% off sale for the programming, and this file gives you access to 5 private videos I've made where I show the specific surf training that I did as well as my theory on surf development. And so I've put a lot of time and effort and energy into these methods, so I hope you guys check it out. And thanks for following along, and I'll see you next time.